Okay, good evening. I'll go ahead and call the school board meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please let the record reflect that all the school board members are here and the mayor is absent due to travel. Okay, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. First item on the agenda is the approval of school board minutes from September 8th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated September 28th, 22.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Sarah Truman, seconded by Jen Preble. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I wanted to make a couple comments about these minutes. First of all, I want to say that I believe that our minutes have been improving over the last few meetings, and there seems to be more substance to these minutes. It was quite a lengthy, quite a lot of information that was shared. So I think that overall these minutes are quite good. However, I did want to comment, and this was my comment before when we had minutes where someone was reported tardy, that if we're going to be noted as being late, it would be appropriate to list the time that an individual arrived. In this particular case, last time, the mayor was unable to be here on time. I would think that we should note the time that someone's arriving, and if there is information as to why they might be late, include that in the minutes as well. I do appreciate the fact that it was noted at what point in the meeting that the mayor was able to arrive here. But I think that's just one more thing that we could do to improve our minutes. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I have one small change to make. Under the chair's report, there's a section related to whether or not we have the ability to help Thorne Academy with the lunch program. And one of the things that was noted in there was we need to provide a portion of our free lunch funds. And I think what I said and what should have been noted is that we are not able to provide a portion of our funds to TA to do that. So I just would like to have that correction made. I'll connect with Jen. Any further discussion?
I would just say that one of the things that Jen has mentioned to me that it's very difficult, and she corrects me every time, that if I don't speak directly into the microphone, because I try to turn my head and look at people, it becomes very difficult for her to pick up on the recording. So just one of those pieces I'm going to try to do is to keep, it's hard because I feel like I'm so loud here in the room when you do that, but trying to speak directly into the microphone really helps her doing those minutes. It's difficult to hear sometimes.
Okay, roll call vote. School board member Archie?
Do we want to make adjustments to it and look back at it next week, or do you?
We can approve these now and then just have her make the change, yes?
Yes, you could do that.
All right, let's do that then. Yes.
Okay, school board member Preble?
Yes.
School board member Richard?
Yes.
I vote yes. School board member Gale?
Yes.
School board member Truman?
Yes.
School board member Johnston?
Yes, assuming the corrections that we have noted are changed.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion passes 7-0. That brings us to adjustments to the agenda. I don't believe we have any. Okay, and then that brings us to correspondence. And there were no correspondences in the packet, so no correspondence. And that brings us to the public session. If anyone wishes to address the school board, please come up, state your name, and address the school board. Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public session, and that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just a few items to update us on. Number one, students throughout our schools are participating in the NWEA state testing. As you know, that's done in front of a computer screen and was part of the change that the DOE made last year for how what used to be the MEA test would be done. and schools are working on that now. Both our Fairfield school and Young Schools parent-teacher organizations had very successful fall nights. They both were jam-packed, and it's great to see the participation in our schools. Thursday and Friday of this week will be the last registrations that we have at the hotel. So we're hoping that as we move into the next week, we will have final numbers of what student counts will be, whether both at the elementary school and at the high school level. Now, that doesn't mean that they will not fluctuate throughout the year as families come and go, but we're at the point where we will have registrations completed, as I believe there are, Meg, correct me, for about 20-ish rooms that will be filled in the next couple of days. Burns School yesterday, there was the final elementary cross-country meet of the season, where we had 250 kiddos from Saco, Biddeford, Dayton, and St. James participating in grades 3 through 5. These are free programs for our kiddos, and it's great to see kids, have the opportunity to participate after school, stay after school, work with some great coaches and volunteers that put a lot of time into the program, and just they're great events. So next year, we'll get you guys out there to one of those events, and you certainly can help volunteer, because the Saco course is a little bit more challenging than some of the others, because we're out on the roadways, and if you try to get into central office or get stuck at central office during some times, you're waiting a little bit. The last thing that I would like to just mention to everyone here and the community is, next week is Bus Driver Appreciation Week and Transportation Staff Appreciation Week. And just like every school district in the country, we work through shortages of staff. They have illnesses. They have days they have to take off. It's not easy. And first, thank you to families for being flexible, as there's been some times that we've had to make some changes early in the morning if someone calls out sick, and we are developing plans to kind of have some canned responses to what those would be that we'll be talking about at our next school committee meeting. I would encourage families, community members, to say thank you to their bus driver in the morning time, because as we look down the bench of who's in line to take those jobs, there's not a very deep bench there. And so we need to be thankful for the staff each and every day. I want to thank Jeannie and the drivers who over the last couple of weeks have been assisting wherever they're needed. And that's a tough job at the same time for anybody who's out there that would like to become a bus driver. We can train. We will support you, whether that's full-time, part-time, just doing sports trips or field trips. Districts all across the state, all across the country are in need of bus drivers, and we certainly would, anyone who's interested, we'll support you in your journey to become a licensed driver. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the superintendent?
I just want to say that I can hear whenever there's a meet at Burns, and I love hearing all the cheering. It's been really great. My kid had to pick between cross country and soccer, and he's remorseful at picking soccer, sadly, but he's hopefully going to sign up next year.
Okay, that brings us to the chair's report. I don't have any specific report, but late yesterday afternoon, I had the opportunity to meet with the landowner that owns the land that abuts the Clare parcel, with Jeremy, the landowner, Brian Canrath from the city, the broker, just to discuss whether there was any interest in what potentially might be proposed, and that will come up under item E when we talk about the land. But that's essentially all that took place. Was we just met with him just to kind of discuss briefly the potential of whether or not the piece would be available, and didn't really discuss any terms of any kind associated with it. It was really more just to gauge interest so that we're not ultimately asking for something that isn't actually available like we've done a couple of times already. Okay. And that's all that I had. So on to staff reports, of which there are none. Board subcommittee minutes. There was a strategic meeting earlier this evening at 5:30. Finance committee next meeting is on the 26th at 4:30, actually at 90 Beach. Infrastructure and personnel have no minutes, but I wanted to point out, because I know that it's been asked a couple of times whether or not they should be meeting. The chairs of those two committees have the ability to call the committee together should a topic come up. And that's actually one of the policies that we're going to look at a little later in the agenda for a second reading, but that can happen pretty much at any time, kind of at the discretion of the chair and connecting with the committee members to pull it together. So if there are needs for either of those to meet, then you guys can do that. All right, that brings us to old business. First item under old business is new hires. And there's a memo in the packet.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move we approve the nomination of Amanda Tripp, ML teacher, and issue a contract for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Sarah Truman, seconded by Jen Preble. Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. School board member Archie?
Yes.
School board member Preble?
Yes.
School board member Richard?
Yes.
I vote yes. School board member Gale?
Yes.
School board member Truman?
Yes.
School board member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to the next item, which is resignations, also in the packet.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I move we accept the resignation of James Mack, CK Burns teacher, effective November 11th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Sarah Truman, seconded by Beth Johnston. Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. School board member Archie?
Yes.
School board member Preble?
Yes.
School board member Richard?
Yes.
I vote yes. School board member Gale?
Yes.
School board member Truman?
Yes.
And school board member Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. That brings us to the next item, which is the enrollment update.
Okay, just another update on where we are for enrollment. As I said earlier in my superintendent's report, we have 2 more days of registrations at the hotel, which will, increase our numbers. We are hoping that those numbers will be included in our October 1 counts, as certainly over time they've allowed some variations in those because of situations just like this. But this is where we stand today. And I will update you next week next meeting, when we will probably be a lot more final on what those newcomer numbers are going to be.
Okay, any questions for the superintendent? Okay, moving on. That brings us to the next item, which is review professional development day, which is October 7th.
And Meg will come up and discuss that.
So last Friday, as students enjoyed a 4-day weekend, our teachers were quite busy. We were able to coordinate over 600 attendees over 3 districts. Our focus was on both social emotional learning and best practices for instruction. We were able to design the day so that staff could select sessions that best matched their needs as professional learners. We had 36 offerings over the course of 2 different time slots in the day. We had a combination of internal teacher leaders, Department of Education specialists, and paid professional presenters that led those sessions. Some of the Saco sessions that were offered were using Fontes and Pinnell word study, K through 5, place-based learning led by the Ecology School, Eureka Math Squared online tools, administration and interpretation of the WIAT, which is a special education screening test, the Welcoming Library using diverse literature with students, which is a $2,500 grant that we were awarded to provide a library that will travel across the district. and then a staff wellness and self-care session. So those were just a small sampling of the 36 offerings. Some of the challenges that we experienced were trying to hold hybrid sessions and having some audio and video difficulty with trying to coordinate both the in-person attendees and those attending from Zoom, and just the logistics of the day and finding space, getting links, and coordinating those many sessions. But one of the benefits that we were able to build in as a result of that is a pretty lofty transition time, which afforded teachers to have the opportunity for really the first time in 2.5 years to engage with one another professionally in a non-structured environment where they could kind of check in informally and see one another. So that was wonderful to see. Some of the successes that we experienced were that 3-district partnership, which allowed for a more robust set of sessions and shared resources that would support offering sessions for smaller groups of folks that might not be maintained with only one district. And a keynote speaker from Maine Health that anchored the day, allowed additional breakout sessions, and then hosted a targeted workshop for resiliency coordinators in the afternoon across all 3 districts. Some things that we're looking to change next year as we up the ante and make it even better are consideration of offerings specific to educational technicians so that we target that group of staff members, which are often new to the profession. Thinking about some of the details like coffee and snacks and different ways to help folks relax and engage with one another over the course of the day. And then probably the elimination of hybrid sessions in favor of either all online options or all in-person options so that folks they still really appreciated having that choice in sessions, but trying to do the both kind of put us at a compromise where neither one was as great as it could have been, and some of our online only or in-person only sessions got some of the best feedback. Any questions?
Not a question, but just it sounds great for next year, expanding it or focusing a little bit more on the ed tech position. So I'm excited to hear next year bigger and better, and it sounds like a great event. So great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but same sentiment. I'm glad that everybody could get together and have that time. I like that, all the districts could get together too and kind of feed off of each other and learn from each other at the same time and get to hang out at the same time as learning some great things. You seemed very enthusiastic about it, so I'm happy to see that. So,
I am. PD days are my favorite.
School Board Member Johnston.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I was going to say a similar thing, Meg, to what was just said, and that your enthusiasm is pretty evident, which leads me to believe that it was a really successful day, and in spite of your technology issues or little things of that nature, it still seemed to be worthwhile, productive, and I'm sure that you're reflecting in part the enthusiasm of the participants as well, which is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item E, which is the state construction project property selection. And there is a memo in the packet that came from the construction committee.
Okay. So first and foremost, before we get into this, I want to be able to recognize all of the volunteers that we have on the school construction site, building committees, people who are spending a lot of time making sure that we have this opportunity that we take advantage of in Saco, working with Oak Point, looking at different sites and land. And while we certainly have hiccups from time to time and difficulties, we got some folks who are very, very determined to make sure that this happens. One of the pieces, as we know, is we've spent a lot of time over the last month talking about site and providing opportunities for people to weigh in on those. we had a site selection, inventory selection committee a week ago where we had 27 members from all of the committees come here in the room and, talk again of the differences between Claire property and the SMS property. And in that meeting, the committees we added as, okay, as a group of people, how are you directing the superintendent to write this memo? And from a 26-1 type feeling in the room, they were recommending that we write the memo to move forward on the Claire parcels of land that we've had presentations on of the fit, and knowing that, as Kevin mentioned, there isn't a butter that we would be working with to possibly secure additional land. You do have an option of building the school on the current land that the city would own, but there is probably a better option for us if we were able to acquire some additional land. After that meeting, we had planned on that day to go walk the site, but the weather did not cooperate with us on that day. But we did have an opportunity the next day for, I think, Meg, you had like 16, 17 people from the committee that had an opportunity to go and walk that site. And certainly that would be available to any of us as a group once decisions are made. Because I think what happens when you start getting your feet on the ground, you start building a picture in your head. And it's hard not to get excited about that. As we looked at the site matrices, the presentations, all of the challenges that sites can present to us, the committees feel very strongly that we should be moving ahead with the Claire parcels, starting this process, moving towards what would be a straw poll, more testing and assessment of traffic and environmental conditions, so that we can get on the agenda later this winter for the State Board of Education, and then begin starting to focus our attention on the real, true, exciting parts of the project when you're starting to talk about classroom space, design, what the next 50 years of education will look like for kiddos. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, because in order to make the ballot next November, by this spring, we have to have concept approval. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and then by staff. And so the site selection committee and myself is putting forward a recommendation tonight for the school committee to move forward with the Claire parcels so that we can begin that work and take the next steps.
Okay, so I guess we will start discussion first, or should we make a motion first and then have discussion? Because I think there's probably going to be a lot of discussion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Saco School Board recommends the Claire site for the school construction project.
Second.
Motion made by Jen Preble, seconded by Sarah Truman. Okay, any discussion? School Board Member Truman.
I'm really excited to get this moving forward and taking advantage of the state funding that we're up for grabs for right now. Young schools well overdue. They've waited a couple decades for a new building, and I think it'd be shameful of us if we didn't move forward and get the schools that our students deserve in the city. So I'm really excited about the Claire property. I was happy to walk on it last week. And it was nice to see. It's a nice flat property. And I think there's a lot of learning advantages to the outdoor spaces that will be available to them as well, to the students. So, despite our setback that we've had, losing our first choice, I'm still really excited about this property. So.
School Board Member Johnston.
Thank you. I am also very excited about this property. After having walked it last week, it it just gave me a new vision of what could be there. I will admit it was not initially my favorite location, but I think the property itself shows a lot of promise. It was exciting to see it on a day that was sunny, by the way, and not raining. But I do think that this committee and all the volunteers that have been involved in it have really put a lot of thought and time and energy into making the best decisions that we can make. So I have to say that under the circumstances of where we are now, I am in total support of this property as our site. Thank you.
I had the opportunity as well to walk the site this past week with the group that went, and then I followed up over the weekend to walk the land behind Saco Middle School. It's been probably decades since I've been in the woods back there. But the thing that really stood out is the Clare parcel. They're both beautiful pieces, but they're not beautiful in the way that we need them to be equally. So the Clare parcel struck me as being flat. I mean, it's the absolute opposite of the Saco Middle School parcel. I mean, there's not a single flat piece of that. The other thing which was really interesting is that we were at that Clare parcel in the middle of a weekday. And it was amazing to me, and granted we're gonna be cutting trees down wherever we go to put a site. It was amazing to me how quiet it was. I was at the Saco Middle School site on a Sunday morning, and the noise that you could hear in the middle of the woods was unbelievable. It was totally different. But the thing that really intrigues me about the possibility of the site at Clare is the possibilities. And we did discuss this at the meeting that we had this past week with the site selection and program committees. The Clare parcel is really the one that makes it possible for us to put the concept that we're trying to achieve into place. There really doesn't seem to be the likelihood that we would have to carve things off in order to make the concept fit there. There wouldn't be the need potentially to say, oh, all right, the discussions that have happened where we'd like to maybe add some fields or put an auditorium in, those seem possible there, just looking at the way the land is laid out. I don't view it as a second choice. It rose to the top, in my opinion, because it's a really good piece of land. And it would fit this concept really, really well. And on top of that, it's near the bus barn, it's near Public Works. We have multiple buildings where I know many of the principals that some who have not had a chance to go through a winter yet here will, we've had issues where sidewalks weren't done. And it's because of how far apart some of these buildings are. They're kind of the last thing to be gotten to at some points. And so we're like right in the middle of the city. This is probably about as close to the center of town as you can get. And when I say center of town, I'm not talking about right here out in front of this building. I'm talking about the center of Saco. And it's a beautiful piece of land. And I think with it being October and hunting season, if you want to look at it, do it on a Sunday. But I would encourage anyone to go and take a look at this piece of land because it really, truly is a beautiful piece of land. School Board Member Gale?
Can you expand a little bit about your conversation with the abutting property owner and the willingness to sell and where we're at with that?
Definitely. I can start and maybe Jeremy can jump in. So the abutter he is open to selling the land. He doesn't currently have it on the market. He has a concept that was approved already for use of the land. He's just not ready to really start a project. So this has kind of come sort of at the right time, where if we are interested in expanding the footprint that might be available to us, he's definitely interested in selling property to us because he has other things to work on. That's essentially the extent of the conversation. There would still need to be, appraisals and, perhaps what was the term we were using yesterday? Like an MOU of some kind that expresses his interest in and willingness to perhaps sell to us and our willingness to perhaps buy.
just to weigh in on that, is we would need to follow the state process of entering into the discussions and having 2 appraisals done is a requirement of the Department of Education. From those appraisals, they would take the average of those, and that would be the starting point for discussions on the property. In addition, we still have to do, once we move forward, we still need to look at traffic and environmental studies and full wetland delineations on all of those pieces. And what we would be hoping to be able to come to fairly soon would not necessarily be an MOU, but an option situation where, based off, again, we have a lot of the process to go through, having that option to buy that piece of property once we've gone through state board, voters, all of those pieces. And that would be something that we would be working with in conjunction with not only the landowner, but the Department of Education to make sure that we are following all the steps that they require, so that this would be a piece of property that was paid for by the project.
Yeah, one of the things also to note is that the interest in the additional piece of land is to expand the amount of space that's available to us to fit this concept and future expansion. And it should be noted that even though that's desirable, the Claire parcel would be able to fit the concept we have in some form. So the additional land purchase is a way to make it, future-proofed in a way, where we have more room to expand in the future, whether that means the buildings themselves expand or there's something that, nobody's thought of 25 years from now is really important to a school district. And we would have space to build something like that, whatever that might be. So that's really the concept around the land. And the conversation was really just an opportunity to sort of gauge interest kind of in both directions as to whether or not the land might be available, and where we're sort of heading into. This was another thing that was talked about, was that where we're heading into winter, the pressure for the landowner to want to do something with it is kind of, waning, given where we're headed into winter. If this were to drag out, that might be different, say, in March. But that's kind of where we landed, was to bring the idea back here and the overall concept, and then based on whatever we determine tonight, that would give Jeremy essentially the opportunity, say tomorrow morning, to start lining up appraisers, to look at getting us on a schedule to have that site appraised, so that we could actually have a real number to go with it.
School number again?
So just to follow up on that question though, so it sounds then that we are not dependent on the sale of the abutting parcels to move forward with the new construction on the city-owned Claire parcel part. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Obviously, design changes.
Yeah, right.
But no, not dependent on that sole feature.
And would there be any instance where we would construct the school and then that property owner develop, I don't know, a parking lot or not, something that is not compatible use-wise to having a school next to it?
Well, I think anytime you have property that you don't own, you are always at the risk of somebody who does own it making different choices. And certainly, anybody has to go through a process with the town and the city and all of those planning pieces. I think in this situation, we have the ability to build a school on the current Claire parcels that are owned by the city, but we also have a individual who owns land that is very interested in working with us, and that's very encouraging from the get-go.
One of the things that we did discuss briefly was that by building on the Claire site, we still have an easement. And so utilizing the easement to provide access to the site that we're talking about using bisects that property and essentially alters what you could really even do with it. It's not like there's going to be something in the middle of this road that would be in the way of the school. The road is still there, and it now becomes two parcels that have, you know, varying degrees of development at that point. So that's one of the things that, you know, is probably, you know, in my own opinion, is probably would be driving an interest in selling the parcel. School Board Member Truman?
I know we've hashed this out before, but for the sake of sanity, with the rumors flying around that this is a cesspool piece of property that somehow the city approved purchase of, when is the, and this might be a better question for Oak Point, but when is the testing with the environmental folks to occur? It's at some point after we approve this point, right? It's not like we're going into this blindly. I know that there's rumors flying around, and I just want to kind of put this to bed.
Absolutely. So we already have a consultant lined up to do an environmental site assessment. So they'll be starting with their work tomorrow. So we'll get answers pretty quick.
One of the other things that was also discussed is that the landowner does have some preliminary environmental paperwork that he had done when he purchased the property, and he expressed some willingness to share that with us. And there were no scary things in it from my understanding of the conversation that we had.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Oh, I'm good. I was just going to reiterate that while I do appreciate we put a lot of energy in SMS, I think Claire is going to be the better option at this point, just moving forward so we can get going, get the access to our funds, and get what the kids need.
Any further discussion? School Board Member Archie.
Well, I would just like to say that, you know, this was a little difficult for me because it wasn't our first choice, and I felt like the last few, well, almost 5 months, we've been talking about why these parcels don't work. But I think that we've done a lot of work with the Claire parcel, and I think I agree with what you were saying, Kevin, that it has become a good first option. And looking at the SMS site, I would love to have the new school in my ward, but we can't handle the traffic, you know, and I don't agree with discussing driveways and subdivisions, and it just, I'm not for taking people's land, I'm not for invading people's spaces, and I think the Claire parcel is perfect for what we need.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just want to say thank you to the site selection subcommittee, building subcommittee, and the program subcommittee. I know the site selection, you guys have put in the hours for sure. And I just really appreciate all the teachers, public members, you know, staff members, and Oak Point for going through our roller coaster. I appreciate it. So.
Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Okay, that brings us to the next item, which is a second reading of policies, BCC nepotism, BIA new board member orientation, BDE board standing committees, and BDER standing committee operating procedures. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the second reading of policies BCC, BIA, BDE, and BDE-R.
Second.
A motion made by Beth Johnston, seconded by Sarah Truman. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Oh,
Just a quick note on the BDE, the board standing committees. With some of those revisions, I think as we look and over the past year with committees and how many times they've met and et cetera. Like, I think these changes are really going to position us moving forward to have a lot of good dialogue and discussion at the committee level and have that come up. So I think these are great changes to what we have, and hopefully soon we'll see the fruits of all their labors. So.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Arthur?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Richard?
Jumping ahead. Richard?
Yes?
It's been a long day. I vote yes. School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Okay, there is no other information noted, and I don't think we have any. Do you have anything additional, Jeremy? Okay. All right, there's no executive session this evening, and so that brings us to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Sarah Truman, seconded by Jen Preble. Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
I vote yes. School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0, and we are adjourned at 7:41. Thank you and have a good evening.